I kind of wanted to like record what we already just talked about. I felt like that was a great intro to the topic of existential crises. And so did you said you already looked up what the definition of existential crisis was? It's a period of intense inner conflict and deep questioning about the fundamental nature of your existence. And so it often involves meaning or purpose. Who am I? Who am I really? What am I doing with my limited time here? What does anything matter if everything eventually ends? Am I living freely and authentically? So common uh, existential crises include everything feels pointless or absurd. You have loss of motivation for things that used to matter, regret about past choices or fear of future wasted time, heightened awareness of death, like I'm running out of time, emotional emptiness, detachment, or loneliness, and then questioning whether relationships, career, or daily routines are real or meaningful. Anyway, this is what Grok spit out when you type in what's an existential crisis.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a very similar explanation from ChatGPT. So I saw the list of points that you have shared in the WhatsApp group.
Oh, my personal existential crises.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, like, yeah, definitely I have a lot of crisis situations in my life. But I just wanted to be sure that is that really like existential in nature, or like Right. So I just went and checked with my personal assistant ChatGPT, and it knows a little bit about myself. Like I told you, right? I keep. So I said, like, hey, do you think this is an existential crisis or not? And then it started listing that a typical existential crisis is when you lose sense of purpose in life, or questioning, like,
Yeah.
what you're doing in life. Is it worth it? Like, worth doing it, or uh, again the same thing that, like, what you're doing doesn't make really sense for you, and also you don't feel that you fit in with the surroundings, or like, you feel that loneliness kind of a thing. So it gave very similar answers, and then I was trying to fit, like, then I had to really search for, like, did I ever have an existential crisis in my life? And then it, like, like, so I was interacting with ChatGPT back and forth, seeing these are the things that I've done, these are my responses to my situations. Like, what do you think? Like, is I don't think I really had a situation where I, like, completely lost the sense of things, or like the direction in life. Definitely there are, like, very intense moments in my life where, like, I questioned what I'm doing, but it did not really make me, like, go beyond that, asking, is there a real purpose to all these things? Or, like, or questioning my own core beliefs, or core identity, or, like, the feeling of that there is nothing much in life to do.
I, I'm wondering where that comes from because, like, I mean, earlier you said that it was because, like, maybe it's just because you've been so busy and you've had this idea of life, or you've had this identity that you cannot fail, and that therefore you're constantly, busy, engaged, and doing things, being successful, and you don't have time to think about these types of things. I think you mentioned something like that. And I'm wondering if just being fully engaged and busy and achieving and whatever your material pursuits are, um, if that kind of like, or so it's one of two things. Either you were very solid in your identity and you're already kind of reached a certain level of self realization where you're fixed. Like I've already figured all this stuff out. I've already moved on from thinking about existence. Like I've already like that was like preschool stuff, and now I'm on like postgraduate level stuff. Like I don't have to worry about that anymore. I already figured it out. Like I did that in maybe previous lives or earlier, and then therefore like like it's I move on. But so that's one way of looking at someone who doesn't have any existential crisis, and then the other one is you were just so busy, you never had time to think about it. And then maybe if you did have time to think about it and you actually examined, you'd actually did honest self introspection, you would be thinking like, oh wow, like existence is a pretty wild thing, and maybe I should question my own core beliefs every now and then, and you know, in order to grow, because you know, I think the whole, you know, if you believe that the purpose of life is to grow, then you know, in order to grow, you kind of have to go through these intense periods of questioning who you are at deeper and deeper levels. You know, some people talk about like the dark night of the soul, or uh, um, you know, like I don't know if in Christianity, a lot of people, you know, when Jesus asked God, like, why, God, why have you forsaken me when he's on the cross? You know, like that, and you can almost think of that as like an existential crisis. Like you know, he's doing something. He's feeling this existential aloneness that he's not even feeling the presence of God. You know, in a certain era, you know, point in his life, and like that's a certain like thing that hits you in an existential level, and like, but that going through that, you know, those like periods that do make you question who you are and your core beliefs, that will help you then to catapult yourself up to whatever the higher or whatever the growth state should ultimately be. So do those two explanations make any sense, and do you resonate with them for you, or do you have a sense how that would uh you know, how that would map onto your experience?
Yeah, so I was actually like thinking, like, because I did not want to be really sound superficial. Because I told you, right? Like, I was thinking really hard about, is there a situation in life where I had to question my, like, the who I am, or like what's the purpose, or like. So one of the things that I start thinking was, yeah, the thing about the death, right? You raised, like, your first thoughts about.
Yeah, maybe we could start there. So, like, was that not an existential crisis for you? Remember, as a kid, the very first time you were contemplating death, that one day you're going to die, and what does that mean? Like, Do you remember that happening?
So growing up, it never really, like, hit me as a question. And because the first time I saw someone, like, someone who died or who passed away, I was 10 years old. Or the first time I saw was like very young, like, maybe I was Prahlad's age, like 3-4 years old.
You actually saw the person die, or you?
Yeah, yeah. I don't. It's a vague memory. Like, when I was, like, let's say 3-4 years old, my great grandmother passing away. Like, she was at our home, and then she went back to, like, my grandfather's place, and then she just, yeah, she passed away. But that was too young. And then the second one was a relative. It's just, like, it's not a direct experience, but, like, he was my grandfather's brother, so he was not. It was a distant thing. But the third experience was after I became, or like after I started my Krishna consciousness journey. It was like 1 year into me being a devotee, or I started, or I was introduced to all these things when I was 15, 16. And it was like a devotee led college program, right? Like a very focused. I was in the college all the time. So one of the faculty members who was a devotee, he was just 23, 24. He was, like, teaching us chemistry then. So he finished his graduation and right away joined, like, the college, like, so he gave up his job, everything, and he was a brahmachari and teaching us. He passed away in an accident. It was like 1 year into, and we were being told that you become, like, a devotee, and then Krishna takes away your karma, or, like, your life will be better, or like. So the very first year into my Krishna consciousness, like, it was not just me, but we were just getting started being introduced to the concepts, and then like someone so young who we were told is like is has dedicated his life to devotional service and like the following his spiritual master's orders, giving up everything in life. He just passed away like out of out of the blue, like he's going home, he had an accident, he passed away. He's 22. uh
And devotees are probably thinking like that's a glorious way, like that's because they say, like for brahmacharis you should die right away, right? If you're in a mental in Hare Krishna, typical mindset is that if you're already like in a brahmachari mindset, you're dedicating your life to God. It's better for you to die right away.
but like that happened in a setting where there are these 15-16 year olds who would immediately question the entire philosophy, or like what did Krishna do? Why did he die? If you say that Krishna will protect you, right? So that happened so early on, and like the kind of explanation was, it does happen, like you're still facing your karmic reactions, you're not in the Shuddha Bhakta stage, or like it's a process, and like it happened to him. So like you should be even more resolute in your determination to be Krishna conscious, because you don't know how much time you have left. I mean, this is my first experience as a devotee, or a very neophyte devotee, or just who's starting. And so there are no illusions for me about death can happen at any time, right? And you have to be even more committed in your whatever practices that you sadhana, or your devotional life, because it can happen at any time. And this clarity I got like when I was 16, 17. I mean, then that question is completely out of the equation, in the sense, does that mean that I'm not scared of death? uh, like for me, the second version of death is the Ajamila story. So I'm super I sometimes have the feeling that, okay, I've done so many sinful stuff in my life. I definitely would go to hell, hell, or like my at the end of the day, I'm sure Vishnu Dutas are not coming for me, and that scares me so much that again it makes me I should take things seriously. Like that's what I was trying to say. Everything in my life, all I had very severe crisis in my life, but all those things, I see those things have happened because of my deviation from my devotional service, or lacking in my devotional service, or lacking in my commitment. Even today I'm not seriously practicing devotee, but I know that the ideal state would be difficulties might come or go away even if I'm a devotee, but the thing is that for me there is a purpose in my life. There is a an ideal state where I would want to go, irrespective of if things would work out or not work out the way I want them to work out.
So, but you've always had the same paradigm in your life. You read Bhagavad Gita, or you heard about devotional service from devotees, and you just immediately accepted, and that became your framework for life, that you just accepted, and that always resonated with you. You never questioned it. It didn't seem like you really had a question about that. You-
I have a lot of questions about the the philosophy or the nitty gritty details about what is being told to me, or how things would work. But the larger picture, that this is the path, the smaller finer details, it's about the people, right? The challenges are me leaving, even in the first instance, me leaving Krishna consciousness for a decade or so. If I look back at things, it is about circumstances where I was put in, but I never I never had qualms with the philosophy, or the like
at least like the essential message of it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that, you're a soul, God exists, Krishna is God, that the purpose of life is to love and serve God, Krishna through devotional service and through the process. Like
yeah,
all the core essential things you've always accepted
yeah.
and you've never questioned those.
It never got to that point. Like maybe if something tomorrow, I mean, like I've seen enough. I mean, frankly, I've seen enough to break down by this point of time. Like if it had to happen, it would have happened by now.
Okay, so you feel like you have strong enough faith that it's been tested enough times through all the different crises you've
Yeah,
experienced,
I was
but it
not even a practicing like serious guy at that point. Like when the all the crisis happened after I left. Uh, but even though during those times, it just increased my like faith or like conviction that it is because like I'm not on my right path, or I'm not in my like true position, or like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, and it's a consequence of that, like to some extent. Like again, I'm not saying that it has always been in all at all times, but like the larger picture I never lost track of it, or I never had to question it, but it only just increased that faith or determination. I don't know if it makes.
yeah, I can theoretically understand it. I don't have the same experience, so I've had several periods in my life where I've questioned things. Um, but it's nice to hear. I mean, like I think a lot of people though have a similar experience the way you do. Like they've either they were born or raised, or they were raised Christian or something, and they've just always accepted that you know that Jesus saved me and that I'm going to go to heaven if I accept Jesus. And it's just always been their paradigm and they've never questioned it. And everything in their life just either reinforces that or, um, I don't know, they're just not introspective about it or whatever. And like, and they've never had an existential crisis about that. And I could, a lot of people I know, or I would say almost most people I know are like that. They already have a worldview. It's been set. Doesn't change. They've had it their entire life. um, And it's not neither a good or bad thing necessarily. It's just it is what it is. It's just I have a different experience.
It was not as if I like completely. It's not set in stone. Maybe it's a cultural thing, like because I grew up, because I'm like by born, like I was born in an Indian family where like this would come more like as a cultural thing. Like even if I move away from Krishna consciousness, but like the concept of the God like it being the same for you, it's a different thing, right? You were born in a Christian family and then you moved into like so that's one side of the things. When I left like Krishna consciousness and moved far away from devotees, um like at that point of time I was not very seriously practicing, like, or I did not have any strong convictions about either this way or that way. The thing that, like, in so there was a journey that happened between when I left Krishna consciousness to the point where some of the major crises happened in my life, where I was reading a lot, like different things. It all started with a book called Our Moon Has Blood Clots. Our Moon has blood.
Blood clots.
Yeah, so it's a history about like let's say genocide about like one particular sect of people that happened in India, like very recently, by one community on the other. So then I started digging deep into the historical and the cultural side of things, not just about like the Indian history. Like that's where my interest in the history started from, and then deep like other philosophies like different Vaishnava cultures, or even Shivites, and then little bit about the world, like history, or like Christianity. That is one of the reasons why I moved to Israel, just to explore that side of like what.
Wait, you moved to Israel with the idea that you would want to experience
So at least know what their history is, like, what is the perspective of like that,
on the ground, like living.
not to like, but I mean not to live it as they live it, but to like see what is it all about there, like living in the Holy Land.
Interesting. So your interest in history was the motivation for you to move to Israel.
And that helped me form a more of a cultural identity. Like it started off as a cultural identity. Then I started even reading like is it Charles Dickens, the atheist, the selfish gene.
Oh no, that's Richard Dawkins.
Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just confused between the. The other one is a novelist, right? The Charles Dickens guy.
Who is the Dickens guy? Yeah, he's some kind of a
He's a
novelist.
novelist. Yeah, the Dawkins and Dickens. Yeah, I just confused. So I started reading like or following these debates about like atheistic philosophies, and I always fell back onto the philosophy like that I learned in my first round of Krishna consciousness, hearing from Krishna Das Prabhuji, like because like maybe that hearing every day from someone like him with that level of clarity, like any argument either put forth by and like in within the atheistic section or any other philosophy, were not sounding logical or like reasonable for me, and that just like nothing else is satisfying my like sense of logic there. So it just like was, I mean, it increased my conviction that like this, like at least in the larger picture of things, this is the path. I mean, I don't like I have some issues like with the nitty gritty of like what how things are happening, or like because I don't some I have questions, and like those things exist.
Yeah, those aren't existential crises. Those are just disagreements with management or.
I for like you have to resolve those issues, but this phase where I had to like I gave up my devotional service or like a thing, and then I took a detour like reading like my own literature, like Indian history, little bit about the global events, global historical events. I lived in Europe, right, and I have also seen the social decline. I've seen social decline in Europe. I lived a war in Tel Aviv, like all these things. The only answer I could like come up with was like philosophically that like the Krishna conscious philosophy. I'll give you one example. When I was living in Germany, like I was living in a dorm, and there was a Christian pastor. He came up like he was trying to convert people to Christianity. He was trying to preach. So he just came to the dorm where I was living. I was cooking. He came up with two young boys, and he asked me like, it was 2015, 2016, that period of time where like I think ISIS and all those things were still pretty active in the Middle East. So he asked me like, do you know why there are so many wars happening in the world? And like I at that point of time, I like he was trying to say that it is because people don't know who the true God is and all those stuff. And my response was like, yeah, it's because people are trying to defend their own version of God. You say your God is true, my God is true. But I was actually reflecting, like, recently about the same question. It like, the perfect answer to that question would be because people do not have the realization of like, I mean, if we have the realization of Paramatma, there is God in every living being, you don't go to war with each other. So like if you see in that sense, it's lack like the answer, like if I don't know, I tried coming up with different answers for that question over different times of period, but this is, even if you don't fully believe or don't have to follow, from a logical sense of point, if you think that there is God in every person or every being, you would respect him, or you would treat them well, and you don't want to fight with them, or you don't end up killing each other. So it's a it sound it gi- like this philosophy gives me more logical answers compared to any other, atheism, or any other ism that you that I could think of. So I'm just giving an example to explain what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I'm holding my tongue to argue against those points, but
Yeah. I mean, we could go on. Yeah.
but that was going to derail our conversation.
So in that sense, it never like I never got to the point of an existential crisis questioning. Okay.
I liked your honesty in the grok conversation.
Oh, really?
That's what I was saying also, right? Like one of the things that I said was like I like how you're passionate about recording, but then when I read that conversation, I liked your honesty of like kind of introspective, like what are my true intentions of actually wanting to do the recording.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well, because the thing is, I'm not an emotional person, really. Like, I don't feel emotions very much. So whenever I do feel an emotion, I try to pay attention to that because I feel like, oh, there's something there that I need to work on, or something that I got to pay attention to because it's just so rare. And I felt like I was actually getting a little bit emotional in our conversation last week with the Kananam. I really felt like a Kananam just crushed my hopes and dreams just mercilessly. I didn't close my laptop and run out of the
I,
conference room.
for a moment, I thought you would do that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, or I'll say I would not have been surprised if you did that and just walked away.
Okay. No, I wouldn't do anything like that. I think I could at least control my emotions enough to, not do anything too rash like that. I was feeling something. I'm like, why? Because I feel like when I first pitched the idea of a podcast, I pitched this idea pretty much when we started the men's group. I pitched the idea and I'm like, hey, we could do a podcast. We can record it. And it was just a passing idea. And, I picked up on a Cunningham's energy right away. He was just like, no way in hell are we going to do a podcast. And so I just dropped the idea, moved on with life. It didn't bother me one bit. But then when Surya brought up that idea, I'm like, oh,
I did.
you brought up the idea that we were talking about recording. Yeah, between us, we had talked. I think it was in this room, and you, yeah,
I was talking about your podcasts.
you were talking about the podcast that I did, and then I somehow the topic of recording our men's sanghas and making a podcast with our men's group came up, and then I said, oh, but Akanan would say no, no way. But then you're like, why not? You're like, why not? What's wrong with that idea? That's a good idea. And then I think because I got that second person who thought it was a good idea and that there was maybe something there. I think that lit something in me that was just like, oh wow, okay, this could actually happen. There's two people now. We got some momentum, and I thought that you would be down with it. I thought you were kind of neutral. You're like, oh, we could do it, not do it, whatever. So I was like, okay, got Surya. All right, Vani. All right, we can make this happen. I've personally been looking for some kind of passion project in my life that I can do with others. There's all kinds of things that I can do by myself that, can provide some meaning or whatever. But I feel like the most meaning that I get out of some engagement is when I'm doing it with other people. And, certainly I get a lot of meaning and purpose and everything with my family and all the engagements there. So it's great. Like that part of my life is nice. But I feel eh, I feel like the other parts of my life, like a lot of people get that sense of purpose and meaning through their work. And, because they're doing something meaningful with others. And like you have an awesome job where you get to do fluid dynamics research and solve complex problems and interact with others. So it's probably more meaningful and purposeful for you to do your job. And so therefore I feel like this, you're kind of getting that part of your life fulfilled. Whereas me, I'm doing a job. To me, it's just a job. Like it, I think I'm okay at it. I'm good at it. It pays the bills, but it doesn't, hey, but it doesn't it doesn't satisfy. Like the work itself is not, it's not engaging enough. It's not meaningful enough. It's, it's easy for me now. I've been doing it, same thing for almost 10 years now. And it's just a job. So I feel like I still need, there's this hole or this void in me that I'm trying to fulfill through some side passion project. And I've always wanted to do it with others. And I was thinking that this podcast could be that thing. So like, I feel like when you said that, why not? Why can't we record, make this into a podcast? I immediately thought, oh, this is like the purpose of my life. This could be like, I strongly attached to that idea. And then I started, my mind started going with how are we gonna make it happen? I came up with all these ideas, pitched it to you guys, did all this thing, and then to have a Kananam here just say no, get out of here, no way is this happening. It just it really made me think, why did I have such a strong interest in doing this podcast in the first place? Like, where did that come from? And then I started thinking well, I don't know, getting closer to 40. A lot of people have midlife crises around 40. My birthday's coming up, so I'm going to be 38 here very soon. And so anyway, so I started thinking maybe this is kind of like a start of a midlife crisis for me. And maybe this is just I'm realizing, okay, I'm kind of midlife and I'm not really doing the things work wise or passion project wise in my life. And I don't have much, I don't have a ton of time to do what I want to do. And if I'm going to do it, I better do it soon. And I was thinking, this is an opportunity that came up. Let's jump on it. Let's go. So then, so yeah, I've been doing a lot of introspection about this whole podcast, whether the motivations are pure or not, or I don't even care if they're pure or not, just where are they coming from, and what can I learn from it? I still want to do it. We could probably maybe stop here. I think we could do a part 2 for existential crises next week, maybe even a part 3. I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
I came quite late, sorry.
We didn't even talk about your thing, and we only got through 1 or 2 of mine, and you don't have any.